you for your invite and opportunity to talk today. Being an academic, I'm just going to switch on to some slides here. So the aim is for me to talk and show for 35, 40 minutes, and that should leave enough time for questions. What I'm going to do is present one particular tool. I'll also talk about a second tool, which actually we're now spending most of our time working on. But Gagana saw a demonstration of this tool about 3-4 months ago, maybe a bit longer, and that's the basis on which I'm talking today. So my name's Нийл Meyden. I work in a business school, but I have a software engineering background. My PhD was in software engineering, and I worked on lots of large software engineering projects for many years and became fascinated by the concept of AI and where it fits into engineering and business processes. And being a software engineer, my tool to deliver creativity was software, and that's increasingly become AI. And really, up until 2.5 years ago, most people didn't understand what we were doing. And then along comes ChatGPT, GPT-3, and suddenly it starts to make more sense for more people. So what I'm going to show you here today is a couple of tools that reflect our line of thinking. And as Gagana said, trying to deliver practical tools as research prototypes that people can, and organizations and management consultants can take up and use. So the main tool I'm going to talk about today is called Business Sparks. So really, why are we here, or why are you here now in larger numbers than perhaps you used to be? Well, it's clear now that the emergence of the current forms of AI, generative AI, are creating numerous opportunities for businesses and management consultants to change and enhance how they work. We've looked at the pros and cons of existing publicly available generative AI tools, and our basic stance is, I think, to be more effective within business, you need more nuanced solutions that are not just based on generative AI, but also on other AI technologies. So the tools I'll show you are based on hybrid AI architectures, and it's more about augmentation than automation. So our focus is not on automating the consultant or the innovator out of the loop. We're trying to augment them, and that requires us to understand how creative thinking and innovation processes happen. The baseline starting point is the need in business for greater creative thinking. The World Economic Forum regularly runs these kinds of skills needs, priorities every year, and you'll notice up at the top here, you'll see that creative thinking is ranked as number 4 in terms of the fastest growing skills. And this is realized also when I teach my elective on our MBA on creativity and design, how many students come into it recognizing the need for greater creative thinking in traditional business activity. There is a sort of recognition that these skills are often lacking from the training courses and the education programs that traditional business people have traditionally come through. So our starting point is that creative thinking is something that we're trying to enhance in business processes. And of course, there are other benefits for creative thinking as well as addressing the skills gaps. It can lead to more design-led businesses. Creativity is a precondition for innovation. Essentially, creativity generates the ideas that you then evolve into money-generating activities. It's essential in faster changing environments, which I think most of us accept that we're working in. It's been associated with increased organizational performance, and heaven forbid, in this grim state of the world in which we live, it can even increase happiness. More creative thinking has been associated with more happiness, which of course practically can lead to outcomes such as better employee retention. So we believe within our institute, within BAYS, that increased creative thinking by business employees is beneficial in many ways. So the question then becomes, how do you think about it? We've been trying to deliver creativity into engineering and business processes for almost 30 years. And traditionally, we used to do it as I show here in the image. So this is a workshop from about 20 years ago run for a major air traffic control system across Europe. And we would run workshops with numerous established creativity techniques. So it was all very analog. You can see balloons, you can see ideas, you can see sketches, you can see all of the paraphernalia that you associate with creative thinking. Of course, there were various downsides to this. It's intensive, it requires skilled facilitation, and generally the process would stop when we were outside of the workshops. So we started to explore other ways of trying to deliver creativity, increased digital skills around the use of creative thinking techniques has been one approach. But our approach that we've been exploring now for over 10 years is to develop what used to be called digital creativity support tools. Now, these are digital tools that are designed explicitly to augment human creative thinking skills during problem solving. So the image on the right shows you on that laptop in green a tool called Inject. And this is a photograph taken in a Norwegian newsroom. This is a Norwegian journalist using Inject alongside her existing news tools to help her to think more creatively around new angles and voices for stories that she's writing every day in regional newspapers. So we've been developing these different kinds of digital creativity tools in health and safety for manufacturing, in design, in social care and so on for quite some time. So we have this sort of baseline knowledge and understanding of how these tools might operate. The question then came as we evolved our work as part of the business school is about what should we develop these tools around next. And one agreement that we developed was to seek to develop these digital creativity support tools to augment creative thinking about business models and strategies. Now, it's well known that many businesses, certainly smaller ones, encounter barriers when thinking about those business models, and particularly when thinking creatively around those business models. And the need to evolve their business models more regularly is growing as we have increasingly frequent digital rethinks and digital challenges to those business models. So the need for more creative thinking about business models is something that we've observed. And it's not just us that's saying this. AlixPartners review from a couple of years ago now highlighted that 98% of CEOs say that they need to overhaul their business model within the next 3 years. And you would imagine that that is not just a sort of an incremental overhaul. It might require some sort of radical creative thinking leading to business model innovation. And this article here from Dennis Oakley a few years ago, he made a sort of fascinating point about why SMEs in particular need new business models. And he says one of the problems that these businesses face, certainly SMEs, isn't a lack of efficiency, it's a lack of creativity. And perhaps they need to stop copying everyone else's business models and come up with their own, because that is a tendency, and I see it even within our teaching here at Bayes, that there's a finite set of business models and you reach for them and you don't necessarily think creatively about coming up with new models, or at least variations on existing business models. So that's our motivation for developing tools such as Business Sparks. Now, as I've alluded to already, if you're an SME and you're interested in exploring new business models, there are different approaches out there. There are well-established, highly cited texts, such as the Oliver Gassman approach. There are various web tools that are out there about sort of how to choose your right business model. It operates in a kind of diagnostic way. And even here at the Bayes Business School with my colleague Charles Barden-Fuller, we have approaches and tools such as the Business Model Zoo, which works a similar diagnostic way. It'll ask you questions about your business and your challenge, and then offer up different types of business model for you to explore. But again, these tools are assuming that your business will fit one particular type of business model, and there's certainly very limited, if any, support for thinking creatively about business models and associated business strategies. So we think there's a gap there. And then, of course, well, we're all largely here because of AI and what Gen AI has brought about in the world over the last 2.5 years. So I need to address this issue of what about the AI tsunami? We now have a large number of different forms and styles, if you like, of large language models that we can configure, specialize, and use. Most of the discussions so far around the use of these models when it comes to business is for increased efficiency and productivity. This is very much the position of the UK government, and I think that's where a lot of the low-hanging fruits have been for AI implementations, certainly Gen AI implementations. There has been a growing voice arguing for Gen AI to augment creative thinking. Most of that research and applied work has focused on the use of chatbots and simple API access to large language models. And most of the evidence so far, and there is a growing body of empirical evidence, is that it will support degrees of incremental creative thinking. Numerous studies are showing that it can augment less experienced people's creative thinking to a certain degree, but as part of a group, it can actually reduce the novelty of the outcomes generated by groups. It actually encourages people to think more homogeneously. I'm not going to unpack why and how that should be with Gen AI and large language models, but there are good reasons for understanding why it doesn't actually push you into genuinely creative spaces. So against that background, we asked ourselves the question, all of these models that are emerging, does this render all of the documented knowledge that we have about business models and business strategies, and also about creative thinking and creative problem solving, less relevant? And our basic argument is no. We think all of this knowledge that we would impart to our masters and MBA students is just as important. Even a lot of that knowledge is yet to be hoovered up by large language models. And there's a huge body of knowledge about how to be more creative that is not necessarily exploited either in the learned models or by how these models are then interacted with during user sessions. So we think a lot of this knowledge is still highly relevant and underutilized in AI interactions by businesses. And indeed, if we want to support creative thinking, we need to think more about how it happens. And one of the more accessible models, I think, of creative thinking is this one called the I forgot what it's called now. That's a terrible, it begins with the C. It's the component model, sorry about this, of creative thinking from Teresa Amabile. And she argues for any individual to be creative effectively on a regular basis, that person needs to have three things. They need to have task motivation, they need to have domain expertise, and they need to have creative thinking skills. And I would argue in the general case, most business people, most management consultants are motivated to solve the problems that they encounter or their clients present to them. On the whole, they also have sufficient domain expertise. They have knowledge about the problem, they have knowledge about the particular solutions, and they have knowledge about the tools by which to deliver solutions to those problems. But most people lack the creative thinking skills because they're not taught within our education system. We don't know, or most people do not know of the vast range of relatively straightforward creative thinking techniques and tools that are out there that enables them and their clients and their end users to be creative a little bit every day. So not only do we need to take all of this codify this knowledge that exists around business models, business strategies, and creative thinking, but we need to deliver it in a way that augments creative thinking by business consultants and managers. So our solutions are here to try and support creative thinking by others and not try to automate the solutions. And hopefully you'll see that a little bit when it comes to presenting the tools. So over the last couple of years, we've been developing two tools or products that are business facing. I'm primarily going to talk about Business Sparks, but I'll also talk about Insights. Business Sparks is a tool that assumes a relatively simple problem statement as a starting point, and it uses that problem statement to explore different creative ideas and options. Insights, on the other hand, is more sophisticated and assumes that you have a large number of documents, assets that you need to investigate collectively in order to generate creative insights from the information within those. And I'll talk a little bit about how Insights works later. But I'm going to start, first of all, with Business Sparks. So Business Sparks is primarily designed for SMEs, SME managers, perhaps directors, and also consultants working on behalf of SMEs. It's not necessarily restricted to that, but that was our initial sort of target user group when we undertook the co-design work for this tool. Essentially what the tool does is undertake machine reasoning. So it's reasoning automatically with information about the challenge that you put in. And it's combining or informing that machine reasoning with codified business knowledge and creative thinking knowledge. So here within our institute, here within the Bayes Business School, we believe we have expertise about business and around creative thinking. And we have explicitly codified that in non-LLM ways for it to be manipulated by our algorithms. So what do I mean by codified business knowledge? I refer to established business strategies that are out there. We have collected, analyzed, and codified those. We've looked at established research that's published and extracted content from that. We've looked at different business models and even business news reporting. And you'll see how our tool is manipulating each of these types of knowledge as it generates interesting questions that it asks the consultant or the user and possible solutions as well. And we're combining that with machine reasoning with large language models. So original concept of Business Sparks was to run without LLMs because we started this work before November 22. But of course, we've integrated some aspects of LLM machine reasoning with the tool. But the key USP to our approach is this explicit and deliberate codified knowledge about business that we can go in and control. We can switch off strategies, we can switch them on, we can change them in response to user feedback if they're not seen to be particularly effective or relevant. So what I want to do today now, and this is, as I said, the work's been co-designed with various SME managers and consultants. So this is work that we haven't sort of sat in our lab and developed in isolation from end users. So what I want to do now is run a series of demonstrations of the tool. I'm going to do this with a series of pre-recorded videos, partly because it enables me to manage the timings more effectively. But also because this is a creativity tool, it comes out with a different answer every time. So it gives me more control over what I'm doing, and I'm not having to read the screen to understand what's coming up. So bear with me whilst I run through this. So let's start at the beginning. This is the typical landing page that you will see when you enter into Business Sparks. And what we try to do, first of all, is to give you a relatively easy starting point with which to describe the challenge. So you can type it in text. So this is a very simple example that's there to guide. Typically, a couple of sentences is sufficient for what's needed. And you can just type your business challenge, as shown here. You can also upload PDF documents that describe the challenge, and the tool will try and summarize those and make sense of them. And in response to feedback from consultants, we even allow you to upload images and photographs. So here's an example of a context diagram of a sort of cafe service, typical local cafe. And if I was to drag that off my desktop into the tool will then sort of interpret it and make sense of it in order to generate a short paragraph describing the essence of that challenge. And you can do that with all forms of visualizations. You can do it with business model canvases, data flow diagrams, whatever kinds of diagrams that you wish. But what we're trying to do is to get the description into some kind of linguistic format that we can then manipulate with our algorithms. And you can always go in and edit the tool's interpretation of your models if you don't think that's right. Now, what you'll notice immediately, the tool has generated what are called sparks. So you haven't had to do anything apart from upload that context diagram. Now, it presents these 5 sparks at a time, and these are essentially interesting, creative questions that it's asking. So what I'm going to do now is jump to a pre-recorded example. This is based on a real organization in the Netherlands that develops flood management equipment. And there's a reason why I'm using this. And they're looking to broaden their markets. So based on that simple description of the of the business's challenge about the need to broaden markets, you can see the tool is already generating sparks. And if I was to click on that little robot head, based on that particular question I've asked about differentiating based on the loyalty of customers, the tool will then generate possible ideas. Now, these are not solutions that you would implement. These are simply further ideas that you can work with, bookmark, and come back to later. And I can continue to rotate through these interesting ideas. Now, underlying what I'm showing you here is one key feature, is that the tool is primarily designed to ask you provocative, creative questions and not give you answers, because you, as the manager of your business, as the management consultant, are the domain expert. And we've uncovered a common response across a range of our tools that if we offer solutions directly, there's much less uptake of those solutions, there's much less ownership of the ideas. By contrast, if we provoke questions around different themes that you can see running across the top here, we were in markets and products, now we're in customers and sales, asking the questions tends to lead to greater human ownership of ideas that are automatically generated. And that's a sort of common refrain that you hear with Gen AI tools, that I get all these ideas that the tool is offering me in the chatbot, but I don't feel they're mine. And so this is all part of that sort of journey of trying to establish greater ownership of those ideas. So you've got the sort of the gist of the basics of how it works. You enter a description and the tool manipulates that description to start asking lots of creative questions. And these questions are based on over 1,000 codified business strategies. So the work that we've undertaken within Bayes is to read the literature, extract what appear to be important recurring business strategies, and then codify them so that they then enable the tool to generate meaningful questions, as a sensible, well-educated consultant might as well. So let me sort of run this through a bit further now. So make sure I've got that right. I got that. Who's where I am on this. So far, all I've done is put in this basic information about the company, but of course you might want to put in more information. So you can define the scope of the challenge. Is it very specific or very broad? And I'll come back to how that gets used later. I can also articulate the sector it's in, the country, so it's based in the Netherlands. I can say something about the company's maturity over on the right-hand side. And you'll also notice I put in the company website. Now, this is a real company with a real website, and you can go and see it. And the reason I've done that is that the algorithms use all of this information, including information from the company's website, when generating the sparks, the questions, and the possible answers. So we're specializing according to all of these parameters that can be set. You also notice that there was options to pick family run firms and also social enterprises, which I click so as to demonstrate. So again, you get the idea of how it works. The tool is now using all of this information here around a company, what I put into it, and information from its website in order to generate what it believes to be more meaningful questions or possible ideas that you can explore. And I'm not going to sort of drill through this since I'm not an expert in water management products. The URL on the left-hand side is the access point to the tool. It's freely available at the moment. You only need even to register for it if you want to save ideas. So if you don't want to save ideas, you don't even need to create a user account. So the idea is we present 5 sparks. For each spark, we present 2 ideas at a time, not to overload you. The tabs at the top are primarily there to give you some kind of structure. So the codified strategies that we've developed over the last couple of years are structured according to broad themes, such as customers and sales, markets and products, suppliers and processes, finance and acquisitions, and so on. Let me just scroll forward again. So if I run through here now, you'll also see that one of the categories of strategy on the right-hand side here is what is called general strategies. And we added this category based on feedback from ex-MBA students who wanted to know why the names of their favorite leading people weren't in the tools. And we never thought of this, so we actually codified about another 70 or 80 of sort of Porter's 5 Ps or whatever they all are. So again, the tool is manipulating some basic information as if you had Michael Porter, etc., in front of you in order to direct possible creative strategies and ideas emerging from these different authors. I think there are about 10 well-known authors. It's a while since I looked at this component of the tool, and you can see some of these names here. So these are probably the simplest strategies that we've developed. Then if I just click on here, we're looking at sort of emerging patterns of behavior from Mintzberg. And again, the tool is then generating possible answers and themes. So what we try to do here is give the users as much control over the tool through simple user selections. You'll notice at this point, I've not had to type anything into the tool. This tool is enabling me to get some sort of creative flow. I can also look at sort of different categories that I tick. So I tick the business as a family business. So the tool will also generate specific strategies related to family businesses that we extracted from journals and other published research on the running of family businesses. And again, I can just click down. I don't think these ideas work so well in this particular example, but you get a sense of how the tool works here. And over on the right-hand side, you can also see there's elements of social enterprises. So I think you get the gist here. Let me scroll on a bit so as not to take too much time here with the demonstrations. Next, I'm going to have a look at a particular area of research, which is business news. Now, one of the other tools that we've developed is, which I mentioned earlier, is around sort of creativity and news. So our tool at the same time is also taking this business challenge and information about Bosman water management, and it's exploring creatively news published over the previous 28 days that might be useful and generating creative sparks based on that news. So you can go and have a look at that news and related content. So here's something published by the McKinsey Health Institute, and the tool has taken information from that, generated this creative spark. Then I can then explore possible ideas that are possible solutions to answering the question in that spark. So again, you could go and do a Google search, find these articles, read them, and then extract your own creative ideas. But the tool's doing it a lot faster. It's even extracting something from the well-known British right-wing newspaper, the Daily Mail, here about sort of low-lying populations, and could there be an interesting market for this Dutch company in targeting these low-lying islands in the Indian Ocean or wherever the Marshall Islands are. So again, you can see I'm bookmarking as I go through here. The idea is you go through and bookmark the ideas as you run through. Let me keep going. So far we've been looking primarily at these strategies, but you'll notice we've only looked at one of the tools here so far, which is the sparks. The tool is also doing something relatively simple to start with here. It's also discovering relevant academic papers, and it also discovers case studies here. So you can see it's pulled out this, since one of the elements of the challenge is around diversification of the business, it's pulling out these papers that I can go and look at. There's also another one down here around firm relocation. And you may be thinking that's a relatively straightforward function. All we've done here is integrate this sort of paper search tool into our interface. And at one level, that's what we've done. But that's quite a lot of paper to read, certainly if you're not into academic content. So what we've also done is one of the sparks that I didn't show you earlier is called Research Insights. And the tool is now generating creative sparks, these questions, based on content from those research papers. So you can start to see here now creative questions generated from the retrieved research papers. How can your product offerings cater to the intensifying need for climate resilience in irrigated? And the tool is then sort of generating these questions. It'll give you a chance to go and see the original resource, and then you can generate ideas out of these as well. So not only are we manipulating our own sort of codified business strategies, we're linking it to sources of potential business news and so on and so on. And you get the idea here because the functionality is relatively straightforward once you've got the sparks. So I'll just jump forward again. So we looked at resources. Now you'll notice there are two other of these sort of overarching tabs that we've not explored yet. We've looked at sparks, we've looked at resources. The next element is called reframing. Now, reframing is often important in business management work because the original challenge might be examined from the wrong perspective. So what we've done is run machine learning algorithms over tens of thousands of paper titles and come up with about 800 hierarchical framings of business problems that seem to exist over the last 25 years from different sources. And the tool then matches those possible framings, such as sustainable business practices here, to the challenge as you go. So at any point, you've got this ability to click reframe based on the free frames that the tool has come up with for you, and it will then start to rewrite your challenge. So you'll see this kind of ticker tape approach here. We're now rewriting the company's original Flood Solutions challenge from the perspective of sustainable business practices. Now, we're only making it run that slowly to make it look like a ticker tape. We could make it appear straight away, but it tended to confuse users. I can, of course, then go in and edit that further if I wish, if it's not quite done it in the right way. But now I've got a revised challenge, which has been revised at the click of a button, which means the sparks change because there's more content for them to work on. So now I've got different sparks about markets and products, etc. And I can do all of the same functionality again based on that revised challenge. So every time I change the content in my challenge description, like you might in the top of a Google search, I'm searching in Google, I change what I've typed at the top in the search bar, it will change. It'll do something similar here. And of course, you know, if I'm sort of looking at this, I might go, well, that's interesting, but let's try reframing it again. So of course, we've now reframed, so the perspective has changed. So this is almost like pivoting within a creative process. Maybe I then go, well, maybe this is around business diversification, as I said earlier. I could click reframe again, and I would be able to go around this process again. So as I said, there are about 800 of these machine learning generated descriptions. They're fully automated in terms of the generation the tool is manipulating to reframe your challenges. Let me go on one last time here. The last feature is business models. And what I've done with my colleague Charles Bodden Fuller is develop a sort of set of about 50 established, probably quite familiar to you, business models. And you can see them here. And again, the tool has matched these business model descriptions to the ongoing and ever expanding challenge description. And I can again choose one. I think I'm going to choose this one here. I'm speaking too fast for the tool now. I'll just have to wait for it to catch up. Multi-brand business model. I click that. And just as with the reframing, the tool will then rewrite the challenge that's already there from the perspective of that business model. So again, I'm reframing the challenge that I've got from a selected business model. And it's doing it quickly so as to not waste my time and waste my cognitive resources having to do that. It'll automate that part of the work, which is primarily translational. And again, the tool's reminding me I can always go in and edit this afterwards. You're not restricted. I can go back and restore the original at any time. And again, because the challenge descriptions has changed yet again, I can go in and explore different sparks which have been generated. So you've got this idea of pivot, explore, discover. Pivot, explore, discover, which is at the heart of any effective creative process. I can go in and even sort of explore new business news ideas based on these themes. I'll skip this bit since you've seen this operating. Now, last but not least, you'll have noticed that I've been bookmarking as I go through. And so at any point, I can go and have a look at what I bookmarked. So here's our expanded description. Here's all the attributes describing the business and then everything that we bookmarked. So here are the sparks I bookmarked. Here are the ideas that I bookmarked. I can go in and manage them, delete them. I can look at the resources I bookmarked, go click on them again so I can follow them up. And I can sort of go and look at the different reframings and the different business models. And all of this then can be managed a little within the tool and downloaded in a PDF or a CSV file that we make available. The tool doesn't do ideas management in this traditional sense because we think there are enough established tools out there such as Miro and Muro to do that. And it's quite easy for us to build a straightforward exporting feature for any bespoke enterprise engine that does that. So we've got little business cards here that are analog versions of the strategies that you would have seen in the business smart questions. And we've also got these different kinds of reframing cards that you can see here. So there's also analog versions of the tool, which are designed to ease people into the use of the tool or use some of its features when the tool is not necessarily the best means of interacting with your customers.
Yeah, we have a request from Otto, and I would also agree with him that maybe we could have a quick view on insights. I think you've
Sure. I am going
sparked our
Can I just show? I'm going to show 2 slides. I promise to keep it
Okay.
short. Okay.
Yeah.
Just it's easier to give you an idea of how this works. So yeah, let me just summarize the use case, and I'll explain how the tool works afterwards. So the traditional view I said is you have a client. They often direct you to or provide you with a large number of unstructured documents in multiple languages, formats, generally unstructured and untagged. You as the consultants have to look at these, explore them, and then generate candidate innovations. And the Insights tool is primarily designed to support this process here on behalf of the consultants, perhaps the client as well. And our aim is to come up with more novel innovations in larger numbers more quickly than you would manually. So this is what the tool looks like. So this is typically the first thing you will see after the tool has processed all of your documents. It will first of all apply primarily different forms of machine learning as well as natural language processing to all of the content extracted from all the documents in order to generate what we call topics. So these are the themes that exist across all of the documents. So if you've uploaded 250 documents, it will identify where are the common areas for opportunities. So this is from a sort of hospitality, UK hospitality sector. It'll sort of show you themes like digital schools in tourism, commercial, property management, and it'll do it at sort of different levels of abstraction. As well as producing these textual descriptions, which are essentially the topic summaries of what exists across your documents, it will also produce these automatically produce these visualizations. So you can see here in the middle, I've clicked the digital skills in tourism button, and these bubbles indicate the sort of the relevance of each topic within the space and their relative semantic similarity. So all these topics are quite similar. These topics are quite similar. These topics are quite similar, but you can see the 3 groups are actually quite different. So it will give you an insight into the topic space even before you start generating opportunities. What the tool will then enable you to do is to pick one or more of these topics, and you can investigate between them or across them and so on in order to generate opportunities. And that is highly parameterized. The tool will then generate large numbers of opportunities for policies, for business solutions, and for technical solutions based on the selected topics and the content about them. So it's now exercising, if you've uploaded 200 documents, using the information from these 200 documents to generate lots of ideas here, such as these. And if I'm then interested in exploring which documents might be a source of inspiration for those ideas, so I've picked an idea here, culinary citizenship programs, whatever that is, it will then sort of take me back to the topics, the documents at the top that seem to be most relevant to them and explain why they're relevant. And it'll also direct you to external documents that might be a useful source of inspiration. And then last but not least, and I think this is my favorite feature, you can pick one opportunity, and you'll notice there's this pivot feature here. The tool will then pivot on this idea of culinary citizenship programs and generate more ideas based on that idea. So this is idea of pivoting in a creative process again. So I've still got my original ideas underneath the original tab, but it's now started to generate lots of other opportunities here. And as I said, we've been using this in a number of organizations now within innovation consultancies, product developers, and even with policy analysts. And you can learn more about, I'll just leave that up there for a second. You can learn more about Insights from that website there, but it's not freely available to use like Business Smart, since there's a cost associated with it. So we tried to make that information as information website as accessible as possible.
I would say a great teaser, Neil.
Maybe I should do a full demonstration again. You never know.